This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manassero.
Hello, old dogs, and welcome to
Fun Facts Friday.
This is our once a week, only on Friday show, where we have special episodes not featuring guests, where I will share tricks, tips, terminology, and techniques that will help skyrocket you to real estate investing success. Today's topic is House Moms 2.0. Hey, but before we get started, just a quick, I like to give some tips at the beginning. I also like to encourage you guys. This hopefully will be an encouraging podcast. I think there's some good stuff, positive stuff here. This is great when, especially if you're struggling, you're having tough times and things aren't happening the way you want them to, or you're getting these unexpected expenses and things like this that are very frustrating. You got to hang in there because things are only going to get better, right? So that's what at least I'm experiencing. And I've gone through a lot of rough stuff. Much of it I've shared on this show. So anyway, I got a tip for you, and that this seems to work pretty good, is that when I have a vacancy, okay, I like to go to different places to list that vacancy, apartments.com, hotpads.com, a lot of online places that don't cost you anything. And that's great. You can also do Craigslist, but sometimes the folks that come from Craigslist aren't always the best tenants, but you can do that. I do like Facebook Marketplace. I get a lot of, I've kind of shared about that, the advantages of that, because you can also if you got somebody that looks like an interesting prospect, you can also, go into their profile and, you get a little idea about the person. But anyway, when I do promote the spaces I have available, I have photos, okay, that are of the properties. Okay, so for example, the apartment in Indianapolis, for example. Okay, I like to put pictures that don't just have empty rooms. I just, to me, that's like, it doesn't really say anything. But if you can take a picture of a room that's furnished like somebody's living there, right? You've got the curtains, you've got all these various things. It really makes a difference. I get great responses when I list and I include some of these photos. Now, I have an advantage because some of my units are Airbnb, and the Airbnb units, of course, are furnished. They've got the high definition TV up on the wall and all these other great things. But it gives an idea of what the place would look like once they move in. And I think any way you can get like an advantage to kind of stand out when people are looking at tons of different properties and they go, whoa, look at this one. Instead of looking at an empty living room or something like that, you've got that. Now, granted, you're probably going, yeah, well, how am I going to do that? And yeah, there's a little bit of expense involved. You sometimes you may, if you really want to, try to go to sort of the nth degree on this, you could company that could actually they come in for one day, they bring the furniture, they decorate it, do the whole 9 yards, and they're used a lot with realtors that are showing properties and so forth. They'll have them come in and they kind of furnish the place so that people can see what it's like. Or sometimes you can just do a, one day rental yourself, move the stuff in there and put up the things that you need to do to make it look like a nice, furnished place. I also hire professional photographers, people that are used to doing real estate photography. You can find these guys sometimes for just like $100. They can come in and do this. Depends on where what city you're in and so forth. But you can do it yourself, but you got to kind of get those wide angle lenses and stuff to be able to, make it look right. And a lot of these guys know about the lighting. They know you turn on lamps when there's lamps there and do different things. So anyway, that's just a little tip I thought that would be helpful for you. If you're having trouble renting out to any of your properties, you might want to consider that. Let's move on to our topic though. House Moms 2.0. Okay. Now, I've introduced House Moms before, and there's actually going to be a link. I think it was episode 230 about the whole idea of House Moms. And, there's like a lot of things that I do that are kind of like 2.0, 2.1, 3.4, and so forth. Because with real estate investing, if you're not always evaluating and trying to make things better, then you're going to end up in a rut, and you're going to find yourself frustrated. But you usually, I like to look at something and say, I've got a problem here. What can I do to solve that problem? So you start with that evaluation stage, and then you sort of set up a system. You start to evaluate, you start to talk to other investors, other people. You start researching online, looking for ways that people are dealing with the same problem. Then you sort of revise your operations a little bit, and then you sort of refine it, and then you actually end up re-engineering it, and then you start implementing it, but then you start evaluating again, and then you start improving. And if you're doing these kinds of things on a regular basis, it's going to work very well for you, okay? There's like two main things I believe every investor should have, okay? A strategic plan and an operations/franchise manual. Okay, you may be wondering, what the heck is he talking about? Strategic plan is simple. That's what you're going to do for that year to achieve the goals that you've set out to do. Maybe it may be acquire one property, or maybe it'll be, hey, I'm going to do my first syndication, or whatever it may be. That's in that strategic plan and all the steps involved to get you there. Okay, so it's it's got sort of a daily idea of what you're doing, as well as weekly, monthly goals and so forth, and they all work toward that end goal that you're seeking out. Okay, that's a strategic plan, and I do a new one of those each year. In fact, next week I think we might actually be talking about that on the Friday there. But then the operations manual, I think, is equally as important, and I call it operations/franchise manual, because what I think you should do is, when you're writing this manuals, think of this like, okay, if I'm going to hand this business or this property over to somebody else to handle. Now, it could be a part of your legacy plan that you're going to hand it down to one of your kids. Well, if there's a manual that says everything that you have to do to run that property, I mean, including all your financials, your P&Ls and your expenses and all those things, but it's also got how to find good tenants, what are the steps to do that, where do you run your ads, it talks about repairs and maintenance, and all of these aspects of running that business, paying your taxes and paying insurance and da-da-da. It's all in this operations manual. And this manual should be a living document, kind of like your strategic plan is too, where you're revising as you're finding things that are more effective. You're tweaking and you're revising, you're refining, you're re-engineering, like I was talking about. And that helps you to have more efficient, effective operating systems that will eventually, hopefully, require less and less of your time, okay, and freeing you up from that business, right, where you can actually hand this manual to somebody else at some point, and they can oversee the properties. And also, ultimately, you're going to be increasing your bottom line more and more in the process as well. Well, one of those areas where my biggest challenge has been in the landlording or property management aspect of real estate investing. I know I've talked about this probably ad nauseum for a lot of you listeners out there who have been listening a while, but it is one of those extremely frustrating areas sometimes. And a lot of it has to do because I bought some C properties, maybe lower C properties, that require more work. Now, the great thing about buying C properties is that you usually get higher returns, right? There's a bigger ROI, or the cap rate, is higher. But that also means that there's more work involved too. The smaller the cap rate, maybe the smaller the ROI, but the less headaches. So, it kind of works that way. But as I have, started off with single family, like you guys know, if you listen to the show, and moved into multifamily, and we're in the process of, our largest multifamily right now that we're in the middle of a fundraise for. So, but the smaller multifamily properties, and that's how a lot of people start off. They'll say, well, let me buy a duplex and see how that goes. And wow, that looks pretty good. I have one vacancy. It's only 50% unoccupied. You start to see advantages. You start comparing it, and you start going for smaller multis, maybe fourplex, maybe, you're looking at maybe, anywhere from 10, 20, 40 to 60 units. Okay, so you're starting to scale up now. One of the challenges is that, first off, it is very different when you do manage a multifamily property. A small apartment is very different than a single family home. Okay, when you own a single family home, people go, that you have somebody there, one family, and you can check on them, or you can give it to a property manager that can swing by and check and make sure that, and do their maybe quarterly inspections to make sure everything's okay. Well, when you have a multifamily property, there are different dynamics, and it becomes apparent as you start to get into those. But the big difference is, I think, is that it is kind of like a micro or mini city or village, so to speak. Okay, it's called a community, right? It's an apartment community, and because there are certain similarities to a small city or village. Okay, you're like the government here, providing power, sewer services, water, parking, security, safety. And it's to a group of people who collectively are dependent upon you for these services, right? Now, they pay for these services through their rent in the same way that a person in a city pays their taxes, right? Now, but they also expect, like a taxpayer does, that things will get done, right? And that if something's broken, it'll be fixed, and so forth, right? But they also interact with one another, just like neighbors in a community, right? And so sometimes, somebody has a bad experience, they share it with someone else, or there's gossip, sometimes there's arguments that go on. There's a lot of things that go on. It's also higher traffic. Now, with a single family home, people can trash the place, but in a apartment community, for example, where there's multiple people and multiple maybe families using that facility, there's more wear and tear, more damage, more trash and things like that to deal with. And also, generally people, when they move into a community like that, they start off as strangers. Some of them just want to stay strangers. They don't want to interact with other people. And then you've got those that will start to connect with some of the other people and actually make friends even in the building. There are also those tenant versus tenant issues too that can occur. Okay, so you've got people living under one roof, or maybe a couple of roofs, or what have you, but there's noise issues. Somebody's blasting their stereo in the middle of the night, right? Pets, if you allow pets there, they can smell, they can bark, they can do a lot of things too that can impact other tenants. People that smoke, they can that can cause, that can get into the common area, or they can leave their cigarette butts around, or whatever that can affect. Or you got the guy who always parks in the same place in the parking lot, and then one day one of the other tenants takes his spot, and hey, you stole my parking spot. What's the idea? There's fighting. Sometimes there's people stealing from one another. Sometimes people are bringing in guests that are maybe a little scary for the other tenants, and they're feeling comfortable or even threatened. And then you've got those tenants sometimes that do illegal things that can bring danger to the tenants as well. And then you've got that issue too, like you do with single family homes too, but you've got the outside influences, the neighborhood. You may have people there that want to try to get access to your tenants to sell whatever they're selling, drugs, prostitution, or what have you, or people that want to get access into the building because they want to steal, or there could be maybe there's a tenant in the building that somebody on the outside knows, and they're mad at him, and there's like a lot of issues. Okay, so I'm kind of giving you an idea of what these things are. Well, if you you bought a property like this, the issue is you've got a lot of activity going on in this community, but you don't really have anybody there that represents your interest. These are people that are renting from you, and they're not necessarily people that are that really have an interest in sort of the greater good. And that's part of the challenge here, is that you normally you do have an apartment community like that. You hire a property manager, okay, which is great. Some of them will be really dynamic, and they will have a strong presence there, and they will help manage this. But what I have found is that they can't really, especially if they've got a lot of other properties around, they just can't give that much attention. Okay, so this was my problem, is that things were happening at my apartment community, and I didn't know what to do about it. And so I was looking at, well, I can't afford to, it doesn't make sense dollars and cents wise to have an on-site full-time person that can be there as a presence to manage things, at least even 8 hours a day, like is typical in most apartment communities. They'll have larger ones that are probably, I'd say 70 units and above, some 60, depends on the, what the rents are and so forth. But there's usually somebody that will be there during the day to deal with tenant issues and so forth. That's a big difference. Now you get under those numbers, under 60 and so forth, then it just it becomes not real cost effective to have somebody on site. So this was the problem I was faced with. There were many issues that would happened during my first year of owning a larger building. And there were things, for example, like repairs or maintenance. Sometimes you have a broken water line or something like that happens. And if the tenants don't call you about it, it could just run for days. If it's just out in the yard and it's not affecting them, they may not report it, may not do anything about it. Sometimes there are issues with people that are harming other people too. And you have to keep an eye out for that, or somebody that comes into the building that doesn't belong in the building. I mean, there's just a long list of issues. And so this is where I was saying, how do I solve this? Now, first thing I did is I put in closed circuit cameras. They gave me a real good idea of the outside and the inside common areas. Of course, I can't have them in people's units, and I wouldn't want to have them in people's units, but the idea is that, you can see what's kind of going around the periphery. You can see if there's issues, people dump trash in the hallway or whatever. You've got people, smoking, crack cocaine or something in the building or something. I mean, in the hallways or whatever, and which we did see actually on our cameras at one point in our basement area. But, so I could see things like that, and then I could call the police and do something about it. Maybe they'd show up, and if they did, well, they'd be looking for the owner, and there's no owner. And so I would run into issues there. So I said, I need somebody on site. And I have known other people that had smaller buildings, and they had like an on-site guy that did handyman work and that kind of stuff, or they maybe helped with some items. But what I needed is just sort of a presence there that could keep an eye on things. And like if any of you have been in a college dormitory or a fraternity or a sorority, they have these people, and they refer to them as house moms. And house moms are just this presence there. Especially young kids like that. They just left home. They come home, and they think they're going to go crazy in their dorms or whatever. But then their mom's there, it's like, uh-oh, mom's here. I can't do anything, and it just kind of helps keep things on an even keel. And so, this is what I was looking for, as a presence. And so I started looking into it. I got a referral from somebody I knew that was doing Airbnb. They said, hey, there's this girl, she's an artist. She's, real responsible and so forth. And so, I had her fill out an application, we negotiated a deal where she got free rent. Okay, but I had quite a laundry list, and in fact, I'll have the job description document and the agreement that I put together for her. I had her sign, and I gave her free rent. Now as I look at it, I think that was probably a little over. I shouldn't have gone for complete free rent, but I gave her a lot of stuff she had to do. She also cleaned all the common areas. She picked up if there's trash in the yard. She was my on-site point person. As any kind of issue would happen, she'd be sort of the one that would be sort of the first responder to call the police or call the fire department or whatever it may be, the utility company. And it was just great to have that person there. And it did make a difference. It really did make a difference until I had some issues with my house mom. And then that just kind of, unfortunately, it was going real well. She also helped me with my Airbnb units too. She even cleaned them. So she got to earn a little extra money by cleaning my Airbnb units. And so it was going good, but then she got a boyfriend. Boyfriend moved in. I didn't know about it. She didn't tell us about it. That should have put him on the lease, and so there were problems, and then it just escalated. She got less and less active doing things. She stopped doing her job. She still was living in a free place, and it just didn't. At that point, I couldn't do a lot from where I was. I met with her. I tried to improve the situation, but she just kind of was it was just kind of like going downhill there. So I got real frustrated. I thought, oh man, maybe this house mom thing doesn't work. But then I had another tenant that I was working with that was actually, as I couldn't reach this girl sometimes, I would call this other girl that was living there. And she actually had experience. She had been like an assistant property manager at one of the buildings she lived in. She also had a nursing degree. I mean, had just a really sharp. She had she knows about technology. She actually used to repair computers and a lot of stuff. And she's also pretty handy, fix things here and there and stuff. So anyway, I started looking at this and I go, wait, maybe if I can revise sort of what I did. I think I made a lot of mistakes with that one. This lady was already there. She was paying rent. So what I did is I talked to the other lady and said, look, I'm going to give you notice and you're going to have to move out. But unless you want to start paying full rent. And of course she didn't want to. So the other person that I had spoken with, I worked out a deal where I just reduced her rent just a little bit, and she did a lot of the same things, plus the Airbnb, which can bring in quite a good income for somebody that doesn't mind cleaning, apartments in between guests. I learned a lot, and I realized what kind of attributes I needed for this house mom. It could be a house dad too. I mean, it doesn't have to be a mom. But there's something about moms, okay. I got 7 kids, I can say all kinds of stuff, but some reason mom seems to be more effective in a lot of things. And I think it's really that kind of that presence. I basically instituted House Mom 2.0. And, kind of taking out all the mistakes I made in the first and revising them. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share sort of a new revised job description. You can actually download it if you want to see what it is. And then you could start thinking whether or not this might be something you might want to do. Now, I don't know if it would work in a smaller multi, a duplex or a fourplex, because you don't have a lot of money to want to reduce or a lot of income there to be able to reduce from, but it just depends on the value. And this person has been absolutely fantastic, helping to maintain things, even knows how to work the security system. Okay, I mean, she knows how to work with the cameras when they're not working, how to reboot them and do things like this. And so, I mean, this was like an incredible find. But you can also find, I would take like Facebook Job Marketplace. Maybe they have some apartment manager experience, or maybe handyman experience, or whatever it may be. But I would really look, and I put these attributes in here that you'll be able to see in this document if you want to download it when you come to the site, and it'll give you an idea. But what I did is I didn't give her completely free rent, but I gave her so much business with Airbnb, and she wanted to do it. She really did, and I try to help her out. If she's running errands for me, I'll pay the Uber or the bus pass or whatever it is. And so I try to help her out that way too. And it works out. And but she has been so great. She's thwarted a lot of potential problems we had. We also, she monitors the closed circuit TV, like I told you, and we can do this on our phones. And she's able to capture video, and we even had robberies that were happening there that we actually got close-ups of the the thief, and were able to give that to the police. And I mean, it's some really good stuff that helped. And that right now, that apartment is just going. It's probably the best it's been. It's quiet. It's peaceful. There are good tenants living there. There's some good stuff. We definitely got our little things we're working out. But it's that, like I told you, you revise and you refine and you make things better. And I tweak things here and there that make that job that much more effective. But it's freeing me up from having to give so much time to that property, especially as we're moving into larger multis now, and I need to focus my attention in those areas. But you might be able to find somebody that's in your existing tenant pool too. Might have a retired person or someone on fixed income that would like to have the extra money and maybe even like to have a little job to do. And I think that was the issue with her, is she's on disability, so she can't really work, and she gets her disability or Social Security, and she's not allowed to work or take an income, or they're going to reduce or cut off her Social Security. So she liked it because we could work out a deal where we're kind of doing in like exchange, by reducing rent and doing other things, so it doesn't really affect her. The Airbnb income, it actually goes into a debit card that I got for her, an extra debit card for my business account, whereas she can access those funds that way. So it just helps her out. You may have people like that may work for your property. Vets are also, maybe you have a vet on disability, but really wants to do something, and or maybe it's somebody that again is got a lot of energy and interest in helping out, that has they have to have the right personality. You don't want somebody that's going to be real nosy, and you don't want somebody that's just going to be trying to micromanage things too much either, but you want somebody responsible enough. And I get calls and texts all the time, just hey, there's a strange car in the parking lot, okay, well, monitor it. What do you do? But like little things like that sometimes can turn out to be something too. And so anyway, that's the show for today. Think about it. Maybe that's something that you might that might make sense for you if you're looking at smaller multis and you're dealing with some of the same issues. Well, I hope that helps out. Everything I mentioned here will be outlined in our show notes on the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog, and you're going to look for the episode entitled House Moms 2.0. So until next time, remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Thanks again for listening, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.